The concept of a new world order has been a topic of discussion and speculation for decades, with many believing it to be a sinister plot to control and oppress the masses. One of the most recent and prolific tools allegedly being used to further this agenda is the propaganda surrounding global warming. On the surface, the idea of combating climate change seems like a noble and necessary cause, but upon closer inspection, it appears that the narrative is being manipulated and distorted to serve the interests of those in power. The notion of man-made global warming has become a staple of modern discourse, with many world leaders, celebrities, and influencers touting it as one of the most pressing issues of our time. However, a closer examination of the evidence reveals that the science is not as settled as we are led to believe. In fact, many reputable scientists and experts have come forward to challenge the prevailing narrative, citing flaws in the data and methodology used to support the claim that human activity is the primary driver of climate change. Despite this, the powers that be continue to push the global warming agenda, using it as a means to implement draconian policies and restrictions on individual freedom. The imposition of carbon taxes, stringent emissions regulations, and the forced adoption of renewable energy sources are all being touted as necessary measures to combat the perceived threat of climate change. However, these policies have the net effect of increasing the burden on the average citizen, while enriching those who are invested in the green energy industry. One of the most insidious aspects of the global warming propaganda campaign is the way it is being used to demonize and marginalize those who dare to question the official narrative. Anyone who expresses skepticism or doubts about the severity of climate change is immediately labeled a denier or a climate skeptic and is often subject to ridicule and harassment. This kind of censorship and intimidation is a hallmark of totalitarian regimes, and it is being used to silence dissenting voices and stifle debate. Furthermore, the global warming agenda is being used as a pretext for the implementation of a global governance structure, which would have the power to impose its will on nations and individuals alike. The Paris Climate Agreement, for example, is a treaty that aims to establish a global framework for reducing greenhouse gas emissions, but it also contains provisions that would allow for the imposition of trade sanctions and other penalties on countries that fail to comply. This kind of global governance would be a disaster for individual freedom and national sovereignty, and it would allow the New World Order to exert its control over the global population. In addition to the economic and political implications, the global warming propaganda campaign is also having a profound impact on the cultural and social landscape. The constant bombardment of climate change propaganda is creating a sense of fear and anxiety among the population, which is being exploited by the powers that be to further their agenda. The idea of a looming climate catastrophe is being used to justify the implementation of draconian measures such as population control and the restriction of individual rights and freedoms. In conclusion, propaganda surrounding global warming is being used as a tool of oppression by the satanic New World Order. The manipulated narrative is being used to impose draconian policies, restrict individual freedom, and establish a global governance structure that would allow the elite to exert their control over the population. It is imperative that we begin to question the official narrative and seek out the truth, rather than blindly accepting the propaganda that is being fed to us. By doing so, we can begin to break free from the shackles of oppression and create a world that is truly free and just. The fate of humanity depends on it.